What is ethics? At its simplest, ethics is a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives. Ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and society and is also described as moral philosophy. The term is derived from the Greek word ethos, which can mean custom, habit, character, or disposition. Ethics covers the following dilemmas: how to live a good life, our rights and responsibilities, the language of right and wrong, moral decisions, what is good and bad. Our concepts of ethics have been derived from religions, philosophies, and cultures. They infuse debates on topics like abortion, human rights, and professional conduct. Approaches to ethics. Philosophers nowadays tend to divide ethical theories into three areas: metaethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. Metaethics deals with the nature of moral judgment. It looks at the origins and meaning of ethical principles. Normative ethics is concerned with the content of moral judgments and the criteria for what is right or wrong. Applied ethics looks at controversial topics like war, animal rights, and capital punishment. What is the use of ethics? If ethical theories are to be useful in practice, they need to affect the way human beings behave. Some philosophers think that ethics does do this. They argue that if a person realizes that it would be morally good to do something, then it would be irrational for that person not to do it. But human beings often behave irrationally. They follow their gut instinct even when their head suggests a different course of action. However, ethics does provide good tools for thinking about moral issues. Ethics can provide a moral map. Most moral issues get us pretty worked up. Think of abortion and euthanasia for starters. Because these are such emotional issues, we often let our hearts do the arguing while our brains just go with the flow. But there's another way of tackling these issues, and that's where philosophers can come in. They offer us ethical rules and principles that enable us to take a cooler view of moral problems. So ethics provides us with a moral map, a framework that we can use to find our way through difficult issues. Ethics can pinpoint a disagreement. Using the framework of ethics, two people who are arguing a moral issue can often find that what they disagree about is just one particular part of the issue, and that they broadly agree on everything else. That can take a lot of heat out of the argument, and sometimes even hint at a way for them to resolve their problem. But sometimes ethics doesn't provide people with the sort of help that they really want. Ethics doesn't give right answers. Ethics doesn't always show the right answer to moral problems. Indeed, more and more people think that for many ethical issues there isn't a single right answer. Just a set of principles that can be applied to particular cases to give those involved some clear choices. Some philosophers go further and say that all ethics can do is eliminate confusion and clarify the issues. After that, it's up to each individual to come to their own conclusions. Ethics can give several answers. Many people want there to be a single right answer to ethical questions. They find moral ambiguity hard to live with because they genuinely want to do the right thing. And even if they can't work out what that right thing is, they like the idea that somewhere there is one right answer. But often there isn't one right answer. There may be several right answers, or just some least worst answers. And the individual must choose between them. For others, moral ambiguity is difficult because it forces them to take responsibility for their own choices and actions, rather than falling back on convenient rules and customs. Ethics on people. Ethics is about the other. At the heart of ethics is a concern about something or someone other than ourselves and our own desires and self-interest. Ethics is concerned with other people's interests, with the interests of society, with God's interests, with ultimate goods, and so on. So when a person thinks ethically, they are giving at least some thought to something beyond themselves. Ethics as source of group strength. One problem with ethics is the way it's often used as a weapon. If a group believes that a particular activity is wrong, it can then use morality as the justification for attacking those who practice that activity. When people do this, they often see those who they regard as immoral as in some way less human or deserving of respect than themselves, sometimes with tragic consequences. Good people as well as good actions. Ethics is not only about the morality of particular courses of action, but it's also about the goodness of individuals and what it means to live a good life. Virtue ethics is particularly concerned with the moral character of human beings, searching for the source of right and wrong. At times in the past, some people thought that ethical problems could be solved in one of two ways. By discovering what God wanted people to do by thinking rigorously about moral principles and problems. If a person did this properly, they would be led to the right conclusion. But now, even philosophers are less sure that it's possible to devise a satisfactory and complete theory of ethics. At least not one that leads to conclusions. Modern thinkers often teach that ethics leads people not to conclusions but to decisions. In this view, the role of ethics is limited to clarifying what's at stake in particular ethical problems. Are ethical statements subjectively true? Do ethical statements provide information about anything other than human opinions and attitudes? Ethical realists think that human beings discover ethical truths that already have an independent existence. Ethical non-realists think that human beings invent ethical truths. The problem for ethical realists is that people follow many different ethical codes and moral beliefs. So if there are real ethical truths out there, wherever, then human beings don't seem to be very good at discovering them. One form of ethical realism teaches that ethical properties exist independently of human beings, and that ethical statements give knowledge about the objective world. For ethicalisms, when a person says murder is bad, what are they doing? That's the sort of question that only a philosopher would ask. But it's actually a very useful way of getting a clear idea of what's going on when people talk about moral issues. The different isms regard the person uttering the statement as doing different things. We can show some of the different things I might be doing when I say murder is bad by rewriting that statement to show what I really mean. I might be making a statement about an ethical fact. It is wrong to murder. This is moral realism. I might be making a statement about my own feelings. I disapprove of murder. This is subjectivism. I might be expressing my feelings down with murder. This is emotivism. I might be giving an instruction or a prohibition, don't murder people. This is prescriptivism. Where does ethics come from? Philosophers have several answers to this question. God and religion, human conscience and intuition. a rational moral cost-benefit analysis of actions and their effects. The example of good human beings. A desire for the best for people in each unique situation. Political power. God-based ethics. Supernaturalism. Supernaturalism makes ethics inseparable from religion. It teaches that the only source of moral rules is God. So, something is good because God says it is, and the way to lead a good life is to do what God wants. Intuitionism. Intuitionists think that good and bad are real objective properties that can't be broken down into component parts. Something is good because it's good. Its goodness doesn't need justifying or proving. Intuitionists think that goodness or badness can be detected by adults. They say that human beings have an intuitive moral sense that enables them to detect real moral truths. Virtue ethics. Virtue ethics looks at virtue or moral character, rather than at ethical duties and rules, or the consequences of actions. Indeed, some philosophers of this school deny that there can be such things as universal ethical rules. Virtue ethics is particularly concerned with the way individuals live their lives, and less concerned in assessing particular actions. It develops the idea of good actions by looking at the way virtuous people express their inner goodness in the things that they do. To put it very simply, virtue ethics teaches that an action is right if and only if it is an action that a virtuous person would do in the same circumstances, and that a virtuous person is someone who has a particularly good character. Situation ethics. Situation ethics rejects prescriptive rules and argues that individual ethical decisions should be made according to the unique situation. Rather than following rules, the decision maker should follow a desire to seek the best for the people involved. There are no moral rules or rights, each case is unique and deserves a unique solution. Ethics and ideology. Some philosophers teach that ethics is the codification of political ideology, and that the function of ethics is to state, enforce, and preserve particular political beliefs. They usually go on to say that ethics is used by the dominant political elite as a tool to control everyone else. More cynical writers suggest that power elites enforce an ethical code on other people that helps them control those people, but do not apply this code to their own behavior.